This is the city, Toronto, Ontario. The story you're about to hear is true.
Back in the day, Fran's was a chain of restaurants owned by a one Francis Fran of Buffalo. The Yonge and Dundas location in Toronto featured an exclusive supper club above the restaurant called the Francis Room, where yours truly worked. First, as a cigarette girl, and later as a bartender and cashier. It was a notable venue in Toronto's entertainment scene. Elegant, sophisticated, intimate, exciting. And it became a prominent hotspot for live performances, featuring an impressive array of headliners. Imagine that I met and partied with the likes of Glenn Gould, Bob Hope, the Mills Brothers, Sammy Davis Jr., and a whole host of other local talent, like my friend Gary here. It was also near the famed Maple Leaf Gardens, so a lot of the hockey players would come in for a late night supper after the games. Other eclectic guests were my friend Murray Lee, who just happened to be the head of Toronto's homicide division. And, he'd come in with his colleagues, his friends, and sit on one side of the room. And in contrast, the Volpe crime family sat on the other. But this was the age of politeness, of cordiality. And the two parties occasionally acknowledged each other over on the Callans, and from time to time even exchanged a friendly barb or two. Now during this time, I'd become somewhat acquainted with the eldest Volpe, Albert, because he always had a kind word for me and treated me with the utmost respect. You could say he was fatherly. However, I knew who and what he was and kept a healthy distance. I really was afraid of becoming entangled into being anything other than a casual work acquaintance. Well, one night, while I was working bar, I saw this short, scrawny-looking guy come in. And I could just tell he was on a mission. I am looking for Myrna Drake. Where is she? Well, mortified, I flew out from behind the bar, rushed towards him, and I whispered, "I'm Myrna. May I help you?" "Yeah. Where is that son of a bitch husband of yours?" "Oh, my husband, Mitch. God love him. He was a gambler, a womanizer, and a con man extraordinaire. It seemed like every week the cops were busting in our front door as my old man was hooking it out the back. He spent more than a few nights in jail. I never had the money to bail him out, and probably wouldn't have even if I did. But anyway, by now, everyone in the club was staring at us over their cocktails as this person continued to intimidate and berate me. "Your husband owes me money, and if he does not pay, you're liable. And if you do not pay, I will garnish your wages. Understand? I will be back, and you better have the dough." You can imagine I was completely beside myself. And I was also very young and gullible. But I was just shaking. And I burst into tears and I flew into the kitchen to try and compose myself. And when I emerged, sniffling and red-eyed, there was Albert Volpe waiting for me outside the kitchen door. Myrna, I am so sorry that happened. You know, it seems like manners are going by the wayside these days. What was that all about, if you don't mind me asking? Well, loath to involve him, but not knowing what else to do, I blurted out that my husband had incurred some sort of debt at the racetrack or the craps table, and this guy said he'd garnish my wages. So Albert assured me that legally he couldn't do that, and further tried to comfort me by stating that this guy's obnoxious behavior was beyond the pale. He handed me his hanky and said, you know, Myrna, these things, they have a way of working out. Everything will be all right. You'll see. Well, I got home that night and recalled the day's events to my husband, looking for an explanation or clarification or even a justification. Unsurprisingly, he swore up and down on his mother's grave that he had no idea what the guy was talking about and didn't owe anybody a dime. Our discussion quickly escalated into a full-blown row that lasted half the night. Exhausted, I finally fell asleep. And when I woke up the next morning, Mitch was gone. But what was I gonna do? I knew that guy'd be back. I didn't know what I was gonna tell him. I was terrified I was gonna be fired, or worse. And I spent the rest of the week on pins and needles. Of course, Friday came, and so did he. But this time, with a quiet, polite, you could almost say contrite demeanor. And before I had a chance to say a word, he began apologizing profusely for his earlier behavior, stating he had absolutely no business bursting into my place of employment, berating and intimidating me, and treating me a lady with such disrespect. Well, I was gobsmacked. I told him I still didn't have the money, and he stopped me and said, "It's no longer a problem." Well, I was confused, so I just said, "Well, did Mitch pay you?" No. Mr. Volpe took care of it. Have a good night. Well, Albert came into the club later that night. "Good evening, Myrna. How are things? Is everything all right?" I don't know what to say, Mr. Volpe, except thank you. "Oh, please, it's Albert, and it was my pleasure." But then, being the astute judge of character that hallmarked his profession, he saw the fear in my eyes. "Myrna, is there something else bothering you?" Well, I didn't know how to tell him, so I just blurted it out. I said, I can't pay you back." "Oh, no. You don't owe me anything. But tell your husband this was his one get out of jail free card." He patted my hand, and he was gone. Well, I climbed into bed later that night, and Mitch says, "Hey, did that creep ever come back to the club?" "Oh, yeah, he did," I said nonchalantly. "And?" And you don't have to worry about it anymore. What are you talking about? It's been taken care of. Oh yeah? Where'd you get the money? Oh, me? No. Your debt was paid by Albert Volpe. Yeah, the mafia boss. His face just blanched. And me, I just rolled over and smiled.
Yeah.